is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Monday, August 13th, 2018, and my guest is no other than Rich Woods of Neowin. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. I'm great. I'm super psyched to be here.
Thanks for being on. I'm really excited. We kind of got to know each other a little bit on that Huawei trip to Europe in June, and I've been wanting to have you on the show because, you know, I've been reading your stories and articles, and I love how you have a really good balance between, you know, phones and laptops and stuff that I don't necessarily, you know, review, like gaming machines.
Yeah, I review a little bit of everything. It gets overwhelming at times.
Yeah, you know, it's good. I mean, variety is the spice of life, as they say. So
absolutely.
Why not? All right. Well, so you saw the topics. I really want to talk mostly about the Note 9 today, but then a bunch of other things that have come up in the news that are kind of, I guess, newsworthy, if you want to call them that. So you were at the event. I wasn't able to go to New York for this because, you know, as a small publication, I rely on sponsorships, and nobody was interested in sponsoring me. Okay. I wasn't able to secure travel and accommodation, so I couldn't make it. And I regret it a little bit. Did they give you review units at all?
They did. Well, they gave some people review units. I didn't get one, but I did get to play with it while I was there. Have you gotten to play with one at all?
No, I haven't at all had a chance to try it out, sadly. Okay. So that's kind of why I want your feedback and input. So, you know, you've used a P20 Pro extensively. I know you use other phones and review them. What's your take on the Note 9?
So I'm not a big fan of the more recent Galaxy Note phones. I didn't like how they what is it? It's 18.7 by 9 now.
Yeah.
And to me, with very narrow bezels on the sides, it doesn't work to use it with a pen. Like, I actually take notes with a pen on a digital screen pretty often at events, and your hand gets in the way when you do that. And to me, it doesn't make sense that the Note really even exists. It doesn't need its own event anymore. This could have been an S9 Plus with an S Pen. Because, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel the same way in the sense that, you know, just like with the Galaxy S9 Plus and S9 versus the S8, the Note 9 is really very evolutionary. I mean, what else do you expect, right? It's kind of hard to beat that. I
love the Bluetooth features that they put in the pen, though. I mean, using that as a remote for your phone is pretty cool because they have decks that you can do PowerPoint presentations with, and as a shutter button for the phone. I mean, that's a cool idea. I honestly just wish they kept it as 16 by 9, so it's a little wider and it's a little more comfortable to just write on the screen. Well,
did you use the Note 8 last year?
I did. I reviewed it, and that was probably my biggest complaint about it. It doesn't need an edge display. That's interesting
because the edges were the same thickness, so I don't understand why being taller would be an issue for you with the pen.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the lack of bezels and the edge display that I don't like, because your fingers just kind of get in the way. Where I really like the Galaxy Note 5, where it actually kind of had a little bit of bezels, and your hands just didn't get in the way when you write on the screen. And
so would you? Okay, so I don't think it's an aspect ratio issue. I think what you're saying is that you don't want the edge display, and you want a slightly wider bezel on the left and right edge. You don't care about the top and bottom edge, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't. Well, I kind of did because it's such a tall phone because they have those big bezels on there, and it just kind of it's so big that it just sticks out of your pocket. But
right, but I can deal with phone.
That. You know,
I mean, if you compare the Galaxy Note 8, which is almost the same as the Note 9, to the Note 5. Right. I have both, and they're about the same size. So you're getting more screen, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but I hear you on the edges. I think that's definitely an acquired taste. I'm not a fan of the kind of waterfall style edges that all the Galaxies have had for a while now.
Yeah, and I can deal with it on the Galaxy S. It just doesn't make sense to me on a Note. I mean, when they came out with Note, the biggest differentiator was the bigger screen and the S Pen, and it's not the screen anymore. It's 0.2 inches larger than the S9 Plus diagonally, so that's nothing. And then it's the S Pen, and to me, it just doesn't work as well as it used to with those narrow bezels.
No, I hear you, and I think that's a total valid thing for the left and right. I personally feel that I do want to maximize screen real estate. In fact, I feel that there's too much bezel on the top and bottom. Yeah. After using a phone like the Oppo Find X, I want no bezels. But I don't want the edge. Like, I don't want the waterfall, like rounded edge. I want flat and then a very thin bezel on the ends. Right. And what I hear you saying is you want flat, but a slightly bigger edge, a bezel on the end.
Yeah, slightly. It doesn't have to be much. I thought the Galaxy Note 5 was nearly perfect in its form factor for using the S Pen.
Right. My biggest thing is, I actually talked to execs at Samsung and gave them the advice to make the S Pen a Bluetooth device. Oh, yeah? I told them that they should have use it as a camera trigger and as like a thing where they can attach the pen to, like, and put it in their wallet or put it in like on their camera strap or something to make it like turn it into one of those, Bluetooth trackers. If you wanted to, if you don't use the pen for pen, like a lot of people, I love the Note because it's a big phone with a huge screen real estate and it's really high spec. I can give an F about the stupid S Pen in terms of taking notes. Like, I don't use the S Pen. I don't care about the S Pen. But I
then
find
why don't you just get an S9 Plus though?
Yeah, no, but I would. But it's also not as big the screen. So my point is though that I hear you. And in fact, we did my top 5 phones so far in 2018 with Steve Litchfield on his podcast this weekend. And the S9 Plus was at the top, one of the top 5, not the Note 9, for specifically the reason that it's almost a Note 9, and a Note 9 is so outrageously expensive that I just don't see the point, right? But back to the Bluetooth. So the Bluetooth S Pen, I'm really excited to see because that's a suggestion I made to them last year with the Note 8, and I said, look, put a Bluetooth radio and a tiny battery, and I know they put an ultra capacitor that wirelessly charges the S Pen, which is really interesting. In there, but I said camera trigger. I said, Bluetooth tracker. The other application I had for it was slide presentation, which I think they did. So I made some suggestions to them. Yeah. And honestly, I think that's cool. But again, it's very evolutionary. The camera system is identical to the S9, right? We've got a dual aperture, regular lens, 12 megapixel, OIS, really, really fast, f1.5. At the fastest aperture lens, and then we've got a f/2.4 tele, also OIS lens, which is exactly what we have in the S9 Plus. Same processor, a bit more RAM depending which version you buy, right? You can buy the 8 gig version with 512 gigabyte of storage. That's insane.
But for $1,249.
Oh, that is a lot of freaking money, isn't it?
That's more than the higher end iPhone 10.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? That doesn't surprise me in some ways. But at the same time, I'm like, how can you justify, if you eliminate the 8 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte version, which is probably overkill. Most people don't really need more than 6 gigs of RAM today. I think in 2-3 years, you might need 8 gigs, maybe. There was a time when 4 gigs was good enough, but I feel that's not enough now. But I'm not sure I use up all 8 gigs on my OnePlus 6, for example. But 6 gigs, I think, is solid. So I would probably buy the $1,000 6 gig, 128 gig version. Yeah. But at that point, again, you're very right that I don't use the S Pen. And even though some of the features of the S Pen are really cool, why would I buy that when I can get a Galaxy S9 Plus with the same amount of RAM and basically the same phone other than the S Pen? I mean, it's a hard sell, right?
Yeah, it is. And one thing I was trying to get an answer to was they're doing the AI camera now, like Huawei started doing, and LG started doing with the G7 ThinQ. And I was trying to get an answer if they're going to bring that feature to the S9 and the S9 Plus, because they're similarly spec'd phones. They could if they want to. And I mean, I don't know how well it's going to work. It didn't work very well on the G7, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one. I feel like, look, there's no doubt that the Note, like, again, I haven't touched it, so, guys, folks, I should say, just keep that in mind. Rich probably can give us more of a kind of hands-on, how does it feel in hand thing. I mean, you've talked a little bit about the fact that you wish it was a different edge design, but there's no doubt that if you look it's the most feature-packed phone ever made. Like, I mean, it's insane to me that it's IP68 with a S Pen silo, mind you, like last year's.
Yeah.
But that Bluetooth S Pen itself is IP68. And, you know, that there's a headphone jack, that there's this camera system, the front camera is f1.7. And it's good because of that it does now 60 frame per second 4K video.
Yes,
like, I mean, it's like
that.
insane. Look at the spec sheet on this thing, and it's just like blow after blow after blow of like awesomeness. And, you know, 512 gigs of storage as an option, mind you, pricey, but you can put a 512 gig micro SD card in there and get a terabyte of storage in your pocket. Like, if you had told me this, Rich, 10 years ago, I'd be like, of course, Moore's Law, I get it, but how much, right? Of course, it's still very expensive, but it's like, it's insane that we can do it, right? It's insane that you can have something in your pocket that has the same storage as, you know, a fully spec'd PC would. And I mean, mind you, you can buy PCs with 4 terabyte SSDs now, but that's not my point. My point is like the average kind of PC people buy is usually, 512 or something, you know. It's kind of insane that a phone can do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kudos to Samsung for making the, you know, checking all the boxes, but it feels a little stale. It feels very evolution, just like the S9 Plus. Yes, of course I want an S9 Plus over an S8, but if I already had a Note 8, it'd be a really tough call to decide to pony up that kind of money for a Note 9, right?
But what if they announce this in the spring? What if they announce this alongside of the S9 and it's just part of the same family? Doesn't it make a lot more sense if they just
I mean, don't even get me started on this 2 event a year thing that they've got going that so many companies have. In fact, I just saw an article, I can't remember where it was, but which was basically questioning why the hell are we doing these yearly shows? Like, why even bother releasing these phones? Like, just release it when it's done, and it doesn't have to be at the same time. It doesn't have to be a yearly cycle. It's almost like the car industry was, you know, I mean, it still is like that, but I'm saying like more like, you know, in the 50s and 60s where every year was like an iteration on the year before, just because they had to at Detroit, and then it was, you know, at the auto show there. And it was just boring eventually. It got to the point where it was just gaudy even what they were releasing, right? Because you're like, you can only do so much. We kind of have reached peak phone in a way, in the sense that
we definitely have in many ways.
You can buy a Moto G6 for $250 and get 80% of what you get with a Galaxy S9 regular,
and that's a great phone. And by the way, they have 1080p 60 frames per second video recording with that phone.
I know,
which is very rare in a phone.
I know, it's amazing. That tells you how much the Snapdragons have improved over the years, even at the mid range. But yeah, look, I feel like, I think like everybody else, that I think, you know, it's an achievement. It's a spec sheet monster. It's you know, if you want the best of the best, it's amazing how much and that display is still so insanely good.
It is.
Every time you pick up a Galaxy high-end phone from Samsung, that display just boom. I mean, it's Quad HD and it's AMOLED and it's perfect color. It's so bright. It is insane what they've managed to achieve with AMOLED displays. I mean, granted, they make the display for the iPhone as well, iPhone 10, and you know it's not no slouch.
Though. It's really,
but it's not the same. You can tell they keep the best for themselves, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you touched it. It's a little heavier from spec. It's a little thicker from spec. Does it feel any different than a Note 8 though?
I don't think it feels any different. It's comfortable to hold with the glass back, and you know, it's sexy. It's blue, and I love the blue one with the yellow S Pen. But it's comfortable to hold. Yeah,
walk us through the color options, because I'm a little confused. I saw a yellow S Pen on some units. Is it only on the single unit?
It's only on the blue one that has the yellow S Pen. All the other ones match their colors.
Why did they do that? Did they explain? Did you ask?
They did not have any reason, because the people on the floor there that do the demo units, they don't have any answers.
Right, and they didn't give you an opportunity to like talk to any execs or anything. No,
I saw that some people got to talk to people, but I didn't.
Yeah, I guess, you know, it's not like we're in Gadget or The Verge, you and I, right? Exactly. I mean, I used to be in Gadget. I got the royal treatment a lot in the past. But yeah, I mean, look, and that's the other reason why, like, I tried to go to New York for this because I knew that it would be really great to have some hands-on videos for my listeners, for you folks who are listening to the show, all that. I wanted to get you that content, but I'll get a review in it soon enough. And once it was obvious and clear that nobody was going to pay for my travel, I could have probably used air miles to go or whatever, but, it's a kind of diminishing return thing at this point. It's a Galaxy Note, okay? Like, it's not like I really wanted to go to Moto in Chicago because I didn't know exactly what we were going to get. And I knew that potentially it was going to be that 5G mod. And that is it's like 5G. It's the beginning of 5G. It's kind of, even though it was a lot of marketing, BS.
It was all marketing.
Right? It was all marketing BS. I don't want to go into the Z3 and 5G mod too much because I covered that in the last two podcasts. But I'm sure you feel the same way that it was a lot of marketing BS. But at the same time, it was significant because it was, it's rare that Motorola actually has events. And whereas, we kind of knew what to expect going to a Note event. So once I figured out that I wasn't going to be able to make it without paying out of pocket, I decided to just cut my loss and stick around and have a look at the news stream coming in from the internets. And it was pretty much what I expected. Everything leaked beforehand. It was crazy, right?
Can I just say one thing about Samsung with the Note 9 though, is you mentioned it before, 4K 60 FPS video capture.
Yeah, right.
And it's still only Samsung and Apple that's doing it, as far as I know.
Yeah. Right. Is it stabilized 4K though? Because that's the thing.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's stabilized on either of them, is it?
I don't know. I'm asking. I might have to check that. If somebody wants to chime in on the internets when you listen to this show, please let me know.
Because they had it on the S9, and I don't think it was stabilized on that. I could be mistaken.
I know that the Pixel 2 XL is right now the only one that I'm aware of 100% with certainty that can do 4K 30 frames per second stabilized.
30, yeah.
The P20 Pro can't do 4K 30 stabilized. It can only do 1080p stabilized.
Right.
I'm not sure if the Galaxy S9 can do 4K 30 stabilized. I don't care about 4K 60 that much unless it's stabilized personally.
Right.
So that's always a bit more computationally intensive. It'll be interesting to see what what comes out of that in the sense of is it stabilized or not? And because that would be really blowing my mind.
That would be really
interesting. If that was the case, I'd be like, whoa. Hey, is that a dog?
Yeah.
Ah, awesome. We have a dog on the show, folks. Awesome. That was great. No, don't worry about it. It's cool. I was just more like, wait, did Rich make that sound or was it a dog? I'm like, awesome. So, what else stuck out for you? I mean, price. We've talked about how insane that price is.
Right. I can't think of anything else that really stuck out to me because it's really just it's an S9 Plus with that extra S Pen and
a bigger display.
Yeah, slightly bigger
right?
display.
Yeah, and it has everything else and more storage built in if you opt, and more RAM if you opt for the crazy $1,250 version. Also of note that unlike last year's Note 8. Of note, that's funny. Of note, the Note 9 has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery this year, which is quite a big battery, which is what we have on the P20 Pro, and you know how long that can last.
Yes,
so that's
it does.
Exciting. I think the Galaxy S9 Plus is only 3,500 milliamp hour, right? So that might be a reason to buy the Note 9 if you are like a road warrior who really needs to go through battery life like a king would. Without restraint, because you can always plug it into wireless charging or to fast charging, which is also one of the nice things about these phones.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I want to also talk a little bit about the other things that were announced. Did you get a chance to play with that Galaxy Watch? Interesting that they changed the branding, huh?
Yeah, that was interesting that they changed the branding. Historically, Galaxy has been their Android brand, right? Because they always had something else when they did the Windows phones, and they did something else for their Tizen watches. So I was a little surprised by that.
And it's a Tizen watch again, which is really interesting because there were so many rumors that they were going to do Android Wear, and I'm like, nope, not happening.
No, not Samsung. They've been very clear that they have no intention of doing that anytime soon.
Yeah. So did you get to play with it, to try it? There's 2 versions. Did you have any thoughts on them and hands-on feel experience?
Yeah, I play with them a little bit. They're a lot more comfortable, especially the smaller one, where the smaller one is a lot more comfortable than your average Wear OS watch, which the ones that are on the market today are just huge and bulky.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still about half an inch thick, but I mean, the smaller one isn't small. I think that Apple still probably makes the most reasonably sized watches. But if you're using a Samsung device, I think this is the way to go because Qualcomm's got an event coming up on September 10th. Don't forget. But
yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Well, it's in my neck of the woods. It's easy to. That means SF, right?
Well, I assume that Apple might be announcing iPhones on the same day, right?
Oh God.
I mean, September 10th. It's a Monday, unless they want to do September 11th.
It's a ballsy risk. Apple usually doesn't launch on Mondays, so it'd probably be more likely they launch on a Tuesday. I mean, they have launched on Mondays, don't get me wrong. I know that. But statistically speaking, they're more likely to launch on a Tuesday, Apple. So anyway,
it'll be a fun week.
The thing is, to me, about the watches is you're absolutely right. I am wearing a Watch 2 from Huawei, and I had the Watch 1, which is actually technically a bigger screen, but a smaller watch. And it was awesome. I love the Watch 1 so much because even though it was a big watch, it had so much screen real estate and such a high quality OLED display, and it was relatively thin for its size, that when they launched the Watch 2, it had a smaller display and a bigger casing. It looked more like a sports watch. And I was like, that's not what I want. I wanted you to evolve on this really beautiful dress watch you made with the Watch 1.
So you're wearing the Sport or the classic?
I'm wearing the Watch 2 because my Watch 1, the OLED got worn out and burnt in from having it always on for 2 years. And so I had to update to the Watch 2, and I removed the stupid ugly plastic band on the Watch 2 and put nice little custom leather band on it. So it looks a lot less sporty now. It looks much more classy. But I wish there was a watch out there for Android Wear. Or I'd be willing to go to a Galaxy, like a Galaxy Watch, because they do work not just with Samsung devices. You can install the app on any Android phone. I'm looking at my options because, and we'll see what happens on this September 10th event. But I think for me, it's like, I don't hate Android Wear. Like, I'm only interested in a smartwatch because I want three things out of it. Number one, I want it to tell me the time always, meaning I don't want the display to turn off, which I know is what Apple does to preserve the OLED, but at the same time, I hate that. And I also don't like square watches. So I want a round watch that has an always-on OLED display. Even if that OLED does wear out after some time, I'm accepting that. I do want a thinner, smaller watch, and I want notifications and a basic fitness tracking, like things like steps, heart rate. I don't need like all the kitchen sink. I don't need NFC. I don't need any of that stuff. So because I don't use it for payment, Android Wear NFC payment is very broken. I shouldn't say Android Wear. I should go whatever it's Wear OS, what it's called now. The point is that if I can get a Galaxy Watch that does all these things, well, I'll be happy. So how much smaller than a Watch 2 is that small Galaxy Watch?
Than a Huawei Watch 2?
Huawei Watch 2.
Geez, I'd have to look at the spec sheet, but I mean, it feels smaller. I can tell because it feels comfortable. Like because I have I was wearing the LG Watch Sport when we were in Europe because I was using the Huawei phone, but that it's so big. It's not necessarily an ugly watch. It's just so big that if you move your wrist, it feels like it gets in the way.
Right.
And I don't get that feeling from the Samsungs. But I particularly like the 42 millimeter one instead of the 46, which does maybe a little big.
Yeah, 42 is pretty small. I mean, it's going to be much smaller than the Watch 2. Interestingly, did you see the specs on those? The battery on the watch, on the smaller one, is almost half the size as the battery on the bigger one, which could be an issue. Because one of the things I liked about my Watch 1 from Huawei and my Watch 2 from Huawei is the battery life. I can almost get 2 days out of those watches. Whereas my Moto 360s, the various models I've owned from the first gen to the second gens, I love those watches aesthetically. Especially the small Moto 360 Gen 2 was awesome.
Moto 360 is just
it was
the
awesome.
Smartwatch. It was the design.
But the problem is it's the IPS panel, right? It's like it uses so much juice just to stay on all the time, even with low backlight, right?
Yeah.
If you have it always on. If you have it like if you set it up like Apple Watch where it just turns on when you look at it, or like you do that wrist gesture, then you probably get good battery life out of it. But I felt like a day isn't enough. I used to work at Pebble, so for me it's like multi-day battery life is kind of a thing. Like I'm not expecting 5 days like I had on a Pebble, but I am expecting a few more days. Speaking of, sorry, as an aside, don't want to derail things, but I want to let the audience, the listeners, know that I got my hands on a brand new in the box Pebble Time Steel and Pebble Time Round recently. Unopened, virgin, fresh, and I did a dual unboxing video that I'll be publishing very soon. Keep an eye on my channel for that. So that's another cool like retro unboxing coming up. Yeah. But that's an aside. So you think the Galaxy Watch is definitely the nicest one yet from Samsung, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I don't mind charging smartwatches every night, although they do sleep tracking. Where Apple Watch and Wear OS, I don't think either of them natively do sleep tracking. Right. So you need that extra battery life if you're not just going to naturally charge it at night.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to use it at night, I'm not going to complain having to charge it every morning very briefly or something while I'm showering, Yeah. It's cool. I mean, look, I'm obviously a big smartwatch fan, having worked in the biz, and
we all are, though. We
all are. I mean, I wouldn't say not. I know a lot of people who don't wear watches and don't want to wear smartwatches, but for me, it's like I filter my notifications significantly, and what I get to my wrist is like the cream of the crop, which honestly makes my life easier. I often have my hands full, and I want to check. What I don't really act on these notifications, but being able to see what it is, like, when you Skyped me this morning saying, I'm all ready to go for this show, I was actually getting a coffee and I got the notification right on my smartwatch, and I didn't have to do anything. I was just holding my coffee in one hand, my car keys in the other. I was driving the Porsche this morning, hence the keys, because the Tesla doesn't have keys. And I was like, oh, Rich is ready. Cool. Awesome. Like mentally now I knew like you were good to go, right? I didn't have to do anything, which was really awesome. That's kind of what I like about a smartwatch.
What I love about smartwatches is that I don't have to hear notifications going off. Like just the notification sound. Do you notice that when we're on a trolley in Chicago that's full of tech journalists, that's the one place in the world where you don't hear a single ringer going off at all.
It's because we all have them on vibrate.
I know. I mean,
my phone lives on vibrate, man, like all the time. Like I never ever do I have the ringer on my phones anymore.
Absolutely.
I mean, I used to, but when you have multiple phones on your person, because I do usually have 3 or 4, because I got cargo pockets and stuff, and I put them in there. You end up being like, this is a real major like noise thing. Like you just don't want to be that jerk,
Absolutely.
So I've gotten used to having vibration, and having a smartwatch adds to that because it vibrates on my wrist, and then I look and I go, oh, this is not important. Forget it. Or this is important. Or sometimes I just need a snippet, right? Like I'm like, oh, it answers my question, right? Like, because I can see the first line of the subject line of the email, and I'm like, oh, well, this is important. I should pick that up. I pull out the phone and look at it. It's really made my life a lot easier. And as much as I didn't wear a watch until I started working for a smartwatch company, believe it or not, I believed in what Pebble was doing, which is I think how I got the gig, because I was writing about them a lot at the time. But I felt like I wasn't wearing my Pebble every day before I worked there. But then when I worked there, I started wearing it every day. And now I'm kind of like, I wouldn't say addicted, but I'm used to it. And so I have a smartwatch and the Watch 2 right now on my wrist pretty much every day.
Yeah, I can't go out without a smartwatch
also, wireless
anymore.
Wireless charging is it's Qi, so it's cool because you can, like the Moto 360, you can just put it on a regular charging pad and it works. Whereas my Watch 1 and Watch 2, the biggest drawback from this is that they're, little pins on a little charging stand, and those pins eventually wear out.
Yes.
The back, the little flat contact patches on the back of the watch get oxidized because of sweat and dirt, and they don't charge reliably unless you kind of clean them regularly, and it's a real pain.
I remember when they announced the Watch 2, and I just kind of asked them, like, what about wireless charging? And I explained exactly what you just said. And they just kind of looked at me with this blank stare.
They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you clearly don't use the watches you make, you MFs.
Yeah.
I don't mean that because I love Huawei. They're pretty awesome.
I do. I love what they do.
I love what they do. I just feel that sometimes they don't really listen to feedback very well. And I'm like, we're only giving you this feedback so that you can make products that are better, so we can write great stories about them, and that hopefully customers will buy them. I mean,
absolutely. And they make a lot of cool stuff.
We're not, giving you feedback just for the sake of pissing you off. It's like, we're really trying to help here.
Yeah, I always tell people that we wouldn't complain if we didn't care.
Right. It's true.
Yeah. And
we're the caringest bunch there is, I think. Sometimes passionately so, I would say. Yes. And then there was a Bixby speaker, right? Did you play with that thing?
No. I mean, they had them out there, but they barely even said anything about it. They're going to announce more, I guess, later this year, they said.
Do we care? There's 5 people out there using Bixby in the world right now, I think, so does it matter? I mean, I don't get this Bixby thing. I don't understand why they're so obsessed with pushing it. It's like, why are you even bothering? Like, it is clear to me that with 3 ecosystems, 2 of them highly successful and 1 kind of okay, the 2 successful ones being Amazon and Google, and the 3rd one being Apple. Do you really need Samsung to come and go, hey, me too, I got one. Hey, look at me, I got Bixby, I'm cool. Like, come on.
Right, and don't forget about the 4th not successful at all, Microsoft, because
oh god, don't even bring that up.
I'm just looking to my left. I have an Amazon Echo, I have the Harman Kardon Invoke, and I have the new Lenovo Smart Display with Google Assistant. So I have everything except Siri up here, and I love the Google Assistant one. Like these things serve a purpose, right? It's just,
absolutely.
Why do we need another?
How do you feel about the Lenovo Smart Display, by the way? I'm curious. I haven't requested reviewing it yet because I'm kind of like really busy with phones.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that over just a regular Google Home or what?
Yeah, I think so. I it's my favorite of the 3 that I just mentioned, and it just adding a screen just kind of adds another dimension to the Smart Assistant, where you say what's the weather and it shows you a forecast rather than just telling you what's happening right now, or a 2-minute long message about what's happening right now and what's going to happen over the next 3 days. Or you can ask it for a recipe and it'll guide you through cooking something. So if you have this thing in the kitchen, it makes sense. And it just adds that extra dimension, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm looking forward to trying it out. I just need to get my hands on one. That'll probably happen in the fall at some point. I'm a little backed up right now. Yeah. Well, so did you have fun? Was it a good event? You got to hang out with everyone?
Yeah, it was
that's the fun part.
I mean, it's just the Samsung events. So they're so packed. It's almost exhausting just going
That's
there.
why they're called unpacked, because they're trying to tell you that it's actually manageable, but it's not. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, boy. Yeah, so listen, speaking of Lenovo, I think we've mostly covered the Note and all that stuff pretty well. I wanted to kind of maybe move on to that Meeks, whatever it's called, 630.
Well, I call it the Mix. I don't know.
Mix, okay. Mix 630, Snapdragon 835, Windows 10, tablet, convertible 2-in-1 that you unboxed on your channel. Please look in the show notes, folks, for links to all that goodness. Yeah, do tell me about that. What is your take on that? Okay,
so first of all, it's pretty terrible. I mean, but I no, it's not even out. It's like this is first gen stuff. So I mean, late 2016, Microsoft and Qualcomm announced that they're gonna make Windows 10 PCs on a Snapdragon 835, and they're going to emulate x86 apps on them, so it'll be a full Windows experience.
That was cool, though, right?
Yeah, and it's very cool that they're doing this, and it's just not very good yet. I haven't even taken it out of S mode yet, which means I'm only running apps that are coming from the Microsoft Store. I'm using the Edge browser.
You're very brave.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to review it, right? So I wanted to do 2 weeks in S mode and then 2 weeks in Pro. So right now I'm still in S mode, and it's struggling a lot. And this thing has a Snapdragon 835 processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, and it cost $899.
Ouch.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, considering a Windows 10 PC that you can get for that price with an Intel processor, I mean, I can't recommend one of these to somebody right now unless you really want that additional battery life that comes with an ARM processor.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's really tough to swallow here is that, so as you mentioned in your unboxing, you know, at the event in Hawaii last year, Qualcomm, you know, basically had ASUS and HP there to launch their respective Snapdragon 835 based Windows 10 devices. One was a standard laptop. The other one was a convertible 2-in-1, very similar to the Lenovo. And then Lenovo announced theirs at CES. But the thing that's kind of crazy to me is that, I mean, you know, obviously, first of all, the reviews of the first two came out pretty quickly, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know why Lenovo
sometime in the winter. Yeah. But then Lenovo waited this long to launch theirs. And the crazy thing is that, you know, not Apple, Qualcomm has announced the Snapdragon 855.
850.
Sorry, 850. Yeah, sorry, I keep thinking 55 because it's the next one for phones. That's what we, you know, this is not confirmed, but we expect the new Snapdragon for phones to be 855. Yeah, so the 850 was announced, which is an optimized for Windows 10 and tablet, laptop type devices. Yes. And you know, we're not going to see those devices till the winter, right?
Right. So holiday season, they said.
Why would you even bother to sell this thing at this point? It's like if you had shipped it a month after CS or 2 months after CS, like before that 850 announcement, maybe you would have gotten some traction.
I think a lot of this has to do with like a partnership with Microsoft. Like Microsoft and Qualcomm came out with this thing and they needed device partners for this. And they came up with 3 device partners and 3 devices. And like, it's very much, it feels like a proof of concept. Like, hey, look, here's this thing. It has an ARM processor. It's not Windows RT. You can run x86 apps on it. It can run x64 apps, by the way, which is
I know that.
Problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it's just it's really just that first gen thing. Like we just have to show that we can do it. Then later this year we'll have the real devices that you'll want to buy, hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean I'm a big fan of the idea. Like I want to make it very clear that I'm not being negative towards this. I love what Qualcomm's doing. I love what Microsoft is doing. And kudos to Lenovo, HP, and ASUS for trying. The prices are too high. The performance is too low with the 835. If that thing sold for $500 with an 850 in it, I'd be like, okay. And you know, like if it was like the Surface Go, which is freaking awesome, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've played with one. I was completely blown away by how great that thing is. I was expecting, you know, it's just like a Surface 4, right? Like the 3 was, but just, you know, revised. And it turns out, no. They actually did their homework and did it right. It was like, wow. If it was a Surface Go running Snapdragon 850 with for the same price, I'd be all over it because of LTE connectivity, always on, all the good things that they promise, right? Because honestly, what do I do on my Windows machine or Mac or even Chromebook? I mean, is I use a web browser the majority of the time. The reason I use my Mac a lot is for audio editing and for video editing, and sometimes batch photo editing, which is just faster on local storage and stuff. But ultimately, I don't really care so much. I've got some legacy x86 32-bit apps that would run flawlessly on these machines today, like old versions of Photoshop, like CS5. I have a license for that for Windows. It would work perfectly on that machine, right? So I don't know. I'm torn because I get the idea. I know what they're trying to do, but at that price, with the level of performance we've seen so far, it's kind of pie in the sky still, right?
Well, I think it gets there eventually. I mean, Qualcomm's processors, obviously, they're much more powerful every year. And the 850 is based on the Snapdragon 845, which, they're almost identical, to be honest. And then next year they'll have, I assume they'll call it an 860, and they're also apparently going to announce a Snapdragon 1000 series that's supposed to go in Ultrabook types of devices. So as these things get better over time, well, I mean, that's a rumor, I should say. They haven't announced
Where is my Snapdragon 900, Rich? Oh, I know what's going to happen. No, I'm calling you now. Okay, let's go through this together. What's going to happen is the Snapdragon 1000 will come out. It'll be the king of the hill. It'll be in the best smartphones and tablets and laptops. And then and there'll be different versions optimized for phones and for laptops. And I'll have the X50 modem, 5G modem baked in, right? And then there will be a slightly cheaper version, like the 700 is to the 800, called the 900. Dun, dun, dun. Yep, I'm calling it now. Watch it happen.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, because I do think that Qualcomm is going to start doing more and more of these different tiers.
Yeah, and that's cool.
Yeah,
that's fine,
cool.
right?
And
can't complain.
You remember when they did the Snapdragon 820 and they compared it to a Core i3?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. That was a little interesting, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think they should have made that comparison, because now we're on an 835, and this thing doesn't. It's not on par with an i3 at all.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're quite there yet on their claims and performance. I mean, there are a few friends of mine have reviewed the Asus and the HP devices with the 835. And they said the battery life wasn't quite there. Like, if you start really hitting it hard, it would not get close to what it, claimed. And I believe that. I buy it. Because
to me, it's the standby battery life, really.
If you game on one of the Snapdragon phones, your battery life takes hit. I mean, it's much better than it used to be, but it's expected, right? The display's always on, the processor and the GPU are cranked up. I get it. It's cool. I'm not a hater. I just feel that, there's a very narrow band of activities that bring the kind of battery life you expect. Well, and you're right, the standby is really not that great.
Because, I mean, they use the powerful cores, like it's an octa-core processor, and Intel doesn't do this, where there's the more efficient cores that are running the background notifications. So that's why these things can be always on, and they can deliver those background notifications and different background tasks during standby and still not use as much battery life.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let's give them a chance. I'm totally gung-ho on the 850. I want to see what it delivers. And I'll repeat this to manufacturers that hopefully might be listening to this show, is that you please make me something really sexy. Like the Lenovo and the HP they're nice, but I feel they're frumpy. Like they're not. I'm expecting more from something with a Snapdragon device in it, okay? Like, I'm expecting so thin and light that my mind is blown, okay? Because there's no reason. And, yes, battery life should be a priority, and of course connectivity is going to be in there, but maybe you can compromise a little bit on battery life insofar that if it can reach the level of battery life of a good Intel device in terms of duration, and you add the LTE for free, basically, and the performance is there, and then it's thinner and lighter, then we have something to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the LTE thing is big, because on all the Intel PCs that have a cellular option, it's an option. It's a premium. So this comes baked into the Qualcomm chipset. So I mean, they're charging a lot for them anyway. But
I mean, you got to pay for service, right? But that's that's going to change. I mean, there's a lot of tablet/laptop plans, like for T-Mobile and stuff, that just add like $5 to your plan. And I think same with the smartwatch plans. I mean, the reality is, it is what it is. That's not what I'm too worried about right now. Considering how much more expensive 5G is going to end up being, I think, in the end, we're gonna, So,
I mean, it's 2018, right? It's 2018. Yeah. I want everything I own to be connected to the internet all the time, no matter where I am. That's all I want.
Yeah. There you go.
I don't think that's too much to ask.
It's not much to ask. I feel like I'm contributing with my car being constantly connected to the LTE. That's the best part. But it's life-changing for sure, and I think that 5G is going to really bring that dream to fruition with the capacity and the latency and everything.
Yeah, I think so. I just don't trust Verizon with whatever they're going to price it at. It's going to work. I mean, I see speed tiers coming. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, this is millimeter only right now, as far as I know.
Yes.
I asked the tough questions when we were there, and they were like, "Oh no, it's not sub 6." I'm like, "Can the device do sub 6?" And
it's
they
in
didn't
there.
want to answer.
They said it's in there. They said it's in there, but it doesn't do anything.
Right.
In the mod, in the modal mod.
But I mean, 28 gigahertz millimeters is only going to work outdoors in the best of cases in urban settings. That's it. And so then you're going to fall back to LTE. So, I mean, the only way I can see them working, having this work financially price-wise right now is that whatever extra you pay for 5G in the plan also subsidizes that 5G mod. You know, like it costs you $0. It comes with it. It's locked into anyway because the SIM is not removable. It's not an eSIM, but it's embedded in there. Right. And can't be replaced by an end user. So, you know, and also with all the everybody getting different bands, it's going to be a while before bands get harmonized on 5G, that a device can be universal between networks. So this is going to be Verizon only. But we've talked about this quite a bit already. I wanted to ask you about a phone that is crossing my desk right now that I have in my pockets that I just unboxed, called the Zenfone 5Z, which was announced at MWC 2018. We're talking end of February. And finally, speaking of like Lenovo Mix that was launched at CS and finally available now, this thing is the same. It was announced at MWC and technically went on sale in June, I think, in certain markets. And the US just got it unlocked. You have to buy through ASUS. And I'm like, it's a nice phone. It's a flagship phone, Snapdragon 845.
I love their designs.
It's beautiful. But I'm like, wait, why does it take you so long to launch this thing? Like, you were the first to announce, other than Essential, which is not technically a notch. It's a hole punched through the display. But other than, you're the first Android phone with a real notch that looks like the iPhone notch announced at MWC. And yet you did not make that phone available to users until June in some markets and August in the US. What gives? ASUS.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, well, the specs aren't exactly dated. I mean, there's going to be Snapdragon 845 phones announced all fall this year, but it just doesn't make sense why they had to wait so long for it.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you played with it at all?
No, I haven't.
Are you planning to get one just to play with, or are you just too busy right now?
I'm too busy. To be honest.
Yeah, I figured. Honestly, look, I'm torn with it. What's interesting, just to give you a quick idea, so it's Snapdragon 845. It has, I think the one I have is 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, or 6 gigs and 128. I can't remember. I think it's 128. It has, can't remember what size display, but it's a smaller phone. It's like more like the P20 than the P20 Pro. It's smaller than like a Pixel 2 XL or a Galaxy S9 Plus. It's more like the size of a Galaxy S9. So it's a little more manageable in hand. Of course, 18:9 aspect ratio, a little bit of a chin, but not much. It's got the notch up the top. It's an IPS panel. I think it's 1080p, and it's got dual cameras on the back, stabilized regular camera, OIS, and then it's got a wide angle, like the G7 from LG. So that's interesting.
That's rare.
Because, yeah, it's rare. And so in that sense, that makes it an interesting phone. I think the battery is, I can't remember, 33,000 something. Watch the unboxing video. I had all my specs and memorized for that for one, so I'll point you there. But
I watched it this morning.
Yeah, it's a nice looking phone. Yeah. It looks very premium. It's, a glass sandwich. So it's got that spun metal look, but in the glass in the back, which is a typical ASUS design.
But does it support wireless charging?
It does not support wireless charging, as far as I know. I haven't checked. I don't have a pad where I am right now, but as soon as I get to SF, I'll try it again. What's interesting, though, Rich, is this phone is almost a clone of the iPhone X in terms of design. Like the shape, the corners, the roundness, the camera module orientation. The only thing that's different, and you can tell it apart, is fingerprint reader in the back. And of course, the flash is below the two camera pod or oval thing, not between the two camera like on the iPhone. But from the front, it's hard to tell apart from an iPhone. The notch, they shaped the notch to be almost identical. Whereas, the OnePlus 6 and the P20 Pro, their notches are slightly different shape than what the iPhone, a little wider or whatever, so you can tell them apart. That's, of course, because we're nerds and we would see these things. Most people wouldn't know anyway. But I mean, look, it's an interesting phone. I'll play with it for a bit, let people know what I think in a future podcast, but I want to put it on your radar that I have it. It's there. It's watch the unboxing video. It's not often we get an Asus phone to play with, right?
Yeah, those are, I mean, I don't hear about them much.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the last one I played with was Zenfone AR, I think, which was about a year ago. In September last year. And that was a Snapdragon 821. And that phone had been announced at CES and it came out in September. Wow.
Oh, so they do this regularly then?
Well, I don't know if it's on the US. I think, actually, no, it didn't come out anywhere else either. Yeah, it's Asus. Somehow they like to announce their phones at CES and MWC and launch them in the fall or in the summer.
By the way, I do have a problem with phones that do the glass back and don't do wireless charging, like
it's
Motorola
stupid,
does.
right?
Yeah. I mean, then you're just trying to make it look pretty, but now it can shatter.
I can't fault you for this reasoning. Speaking of odd-looking phones and weird announcements, Palm has come back from the dead to join Nokia and BlackBerry in the great zombie sky, in the pie in the sky of Android world.
With a 3.3 inch.
Yeah, there's rumors of a Palm branded phone with some leaks. Check the show notes for a link to a story by The Verge, but I don't know if you guys covered it on Neowin. I know I checked what you wrote, but I didn't see it in your lineup. Basically,
someone else wrote it.
It's a Palm phone, branded. You know, the brand was acquired by a Chinese company, for the phone part at least. It's Android, of course, but what's interesting is that it's tiny. You said 3.3 inches. That's as far as we know, and it's the code name for it is Pepito, which, by the way, is a really, really tasty kind of cookie / cracker you can buy in France.
Really?
If you're ever in France, go to the corner store or whatever the equivalent is and get yourself a little, they look like, you know, those hit cookies that are in a round cardboard package. So that this is the same kind of round package where they're all stacked, kind of like you know, the equivalent would be here, like the hit cookies that are like basically like a sandwich of chocolate between two wafers.
Cool. That's
the same thing, but they're not a sandwich of chocolate. There's just a pastry and like chocolate on top. It's kind of like half Oreo, but they're tasty. And so that's the code name for this phone. We don't know much about it, but it looks very low, mid-range spec-ish, so who knows?
Yeah,
I mean, it's good to see the Palm brand come back, I guess.
By the way, let's talk about that branding.
All right, let's do there are opinions. Rich has them. Let's hear them.
Well, just that logo on the back is it's kind of killing me inside. You know, is it Palm? Is it Plam? What is it?
Oh, I don't know. It's a weird one, right? Like it's so. In case you haven't seen the photos yet and you're listening, it's the letter P, the letter A, and below the letter P is the letter L, and below the letter A is the letter M. So it's organized in a square, and it says PALM, and it's very sad face looking.
It is. It's such a weird device, though. Like it's got that vertical camera housing, but it's a single lens and a flash.
Yeah, it looks like a tiny, tiny iPhone 10. Definitely looks like a glass sandwich with a metal frame, or it could all be plastic. It's hard to tell, but from what I can see here, I would say that the display is not 18:9. Or at least if it is, there's definitely a bezel on the top. If you do some color adjustment on the photo that they published, you can kind of see that there's a line between the status bar there and the camera and here piece. But
at that size, I wouldn't be surprised if they did 4x3.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I have a feeling it looks like 69 to me, and then there's like the ... hardware button, like capacitive button below. I don't think that's part of the display. And as you said, an oval-shaped single camera and flash module in the back. And who knows? Who knows it's 720p, 3.3 inches, supposedly. Wah, wah. I mean, at that size, though, it might be pretty good.
Particularly low resolution.
No, it's not bad for that size display. Snapdragon 435, so about the same speed and performance as the Moto G6. 3 gigs of RAM, 30 gigs of storage, and Android Oreo. Where's my Pi? My freaking Pi, folks. I mean, it's going to be a little while before Pi shows up, right? Obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Kind of phones.
So who buys this?
Whoa. Rich, I don't know. I'm not judging. Like, that's not my job to tell you who buys this. No, I'm kidding. Who does buy this? I would buy this because it's cool. It depends on the price. Because I do look. I want to remind you folks that HTC made the Aria or Aria, ARIA, back in the day, which was a tiny 3.2, 3-inch HTC Android phone. It had all the HTC goodness. It was a mid-range phone. And it was around the time that HTC was really popular and pumping out phone after phone after phone. And that phone was really lovely to use. It was really small. Along the same lines, Sony Ericsson, when they still existed as a Sony Ericsson thing, maybe actually it was after that. Maybe it was just Sony. But shortly after the Sony Ericsson breakup, there was an Android phone, like in the early days of Android, made by Sony that was water resistant and basically like dust resistant, you know, like rugged, that had a 3-inch display. It was really tiny. It was tiny, tiny, tiny. It was thick though because it was rugged and everything. But I remember reviewing it. There's probably a video somewhere on my YouTube or something. So it's not the first time we've seen phone. And remember, I want to point this out. Remember, the original iPhone was 3.5 inches. And remember that the original Android phone, the G1, and in fact, its successor, the HTC Dream, had a 3.2-inch display. And we lived perfectly happily with that. Yes, remember when the HTC Evo 4G came out and the HTC HD2? And they had 4.3-inch display, and our brains literally exploded.
Well, what about when the original Galaxy Note came out? The 5-inch
5-inch display. I know 5 inches, guys. Like, you know, every phone is 5-inch now, or more than that.
The small phones are 5 inches now.
Correct. So just point of reference. In fact, I would love to find an original Galaxy Note just to put it next to a normal phone today and realize how tiny it is. Yeah. It was a bit weird because it had a weird aspect ratio, right? Wasn't it 3:2? It was really wide. I remember the original Note being really wide.
Yeah, I don't remember what the aspect ratio was.
Anyway, somebody out there remind me. I reviewed it for Engadget. It was like, how can I not remember this? Anyway, the point is that this could be good. I mean, this could be also terrible and horrible and sad, and lots of sadness could happen.
I think it'll be good if you want a phone that's that size. I don't know if it'll ever be a mass market type of thing. Like the market has moved on from those small phones.
Yeah, but you know, there are some people who like to go party, and I know a lot of ladies, friends of mine, and women who prefer to kind of tuck their phone in their bra, you know, like. Okay. So like a big Note, like, doesn't fit very well in there. It's not that discreet, but you can stick a tiny little palm 3.3-inch in there pretty happily. So
that's true.
Maybe that's what it's for, you know? I don't know. Sometimes you got to accessorize. Who knows? I mean, I think there's a market for it. I just don't think it's going to be huge, just in the same way as the Key 2 has a market. But who buys that, right? And you know, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. But hey, variety is what Android brings to the table.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy about it. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly talk about something that maybe you know more about because you follow Windows a lot. Windows 10 support on Chromebooks. A story on Engadget about Google, basically supporting some sort of dual boot option on some Chromebooks. I had no idea this was even in the works. When supposedly Pixelbooks included in that? What?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. Well, I mean, on Intel-based Chromebooks, it makes a lot of sense to me. Right, on ARM-based Chromebooks, I don't think they're going to be able to do it in general. Because, I mean, Windows 10 right now, as far as ARM goes, Windows 10 only supports Snapdragon 835. Right. So you also need, the report I saw today was from XDA, and that said you need at least 40 gigs of storage on the machine.
Right, that makes sense.
So yeah, the Windows 10 requirements is 16 gigs on a 32-bit system and 20 gigs on a 64-bit system. Right. But I mean, it makes sense to me for the same reason that it made sense for Apple to do Boot Camp years ago, because there are people that say I don't want a Chromebook because it's not going to meet my needs. It's some people. Well, I mean, it's not just a browser anymore, but it's. Still, it's running mobile applications. So people look at it like this, and you say, well, you can always install Windows if you need to, and then you'll have Chrome OS. And obviously, Chrome OS is going to continue to mature in the future. Like, it's going to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, and like I said, it makes sense in the same way that it made sense for Apple because it gives people who purchase one an alternative. And if that was the barrier to entry, that barrier is now eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm a huge fan of Chrome OS. Personally, would want to stick with it in most situations. But I have to say, the Pixelbook hardware is so hot and sexy and amazing. I have one that it'd be interesting to run Windows 10 on that if you needed to do a bit more heavy lifting. And so that came as a bit of a surprise to me, but I'm also kind of excited about it. So let's keep our eyes out for what happens with that, because I think this might be a great way to sell more devices.
I think that's going to be pretty cool. But I mean, it's going to be a small amount of Chromebooks that it actually works on, because you do need it does need an Intel chip. But maybe we'll see more of those devices in the future. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
For sure. Well, listen, we should wrap it up. I want to give you an opportunity to tell people on the show where they can find you on the internets, online, out there in the sky and the cloud.
Well, as always, they could, you can find my work on Neowin, the Neowin YouTube channel, and then on Twitter, I'm the Rich Woods. Instagram, although I don't Instagram as much as I should. Same thing, the Rich Woods. That's where.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, follow Rich if you want to, I think it's a really good balance of phones, laptops, kind of more technical articles around Windows stuff and gaming, laptops and PCs. It's cool. I love what you guys are doing over there with Neowin, and I'm certainly a big fan. And now that you've got a P20 Pro, we're going to see more Instagrams. So, woohoo. Right?
Yeah, well, I love that P20 Pro. It's just that camera kind of spoils me for a lot of other devices. And it sets the bar so much higher.
It is such a game changer having that zoom lens too, right?
Yeah.
And you guys know where to find me. I'm Tanker on the internet. That's Tanker like the comic book character, but with the vowels dropped. So TNKGRL on Twitter, same on Instagram. You can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. It's my full name spelled out, Miriam with a Y. You'll find some complimentary videos to this podcast, things that show you in visuals what I'm talking about on the show. And lots of unboxing. I'm a big fan of unboxings. It's fun. And then, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos if you do, and subscribe to the podcast. mobiletechpodcast.com is where you can find the RSS feed. But more importantly, we're in the directory on Apple Podcasts, which is iTunes, on Google Podcasts, on Pocket Casts, Overcast, Slacker, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, everywhere. If you can't find me by just Googling Mobile Tech Podcast, add Tankerl, TNKGRL to that, and you'll definitely find me then, because there's a lot of keywords that respond to that. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible.com. Audible is the place to go for audiobooks. So if you love listening to books instead of reading them for whatever reason, you're driving, your eyes are tired, you want to fall asleep, whatever it is, you should check out Audible.com. And more importantly, if you go in the show notes below here, there'll be a link to a deal. You can sign up and support the podcast. It's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. Rich, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'd like to have you on again, maybe when the Snapdragon 850 devices come to light. That would be pretty awesome. Those laptops and tablets with Windows 10.
Sure, I'd love to.
We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, stay tuned for another show next week. And thanks for tuning in. Cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.